What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest has a keen sense for sustainable design, is a total designer, has a wonderful eye for interior design, a principal partner at Stonehill and Taylor Architects. Ladies and gentlemen, Sara Duffy. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, one of the things that I love about doing all of these conversations, as we were just saying, is I get to interview people who I'm friends with. And I feel like there's just these really amazing conversations, and I'm just always so comfortable with you. And I'm just really looking forward to kind of just digging in and about like what you do and why you do it and just learn more about you. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I said in your introduction that you are now a principal at Stonehill Taylor Architects. So walk us through the timeline on that and like how exciting was it? And like, just take us up to where you are now.
Okay, so I became a principal, I think it was 3 months before COVID hit, maybe not quite.
Perfect timing.
Note to self, don't become a principal right before COVID. It was a lot. And, so obviously for all of us, panic ensued. And I went from just being a regular sort of leader at the firm and designer to having to worry about keeping the firm going. So that was super intense, but amazing at the same time, and I certainly learned a lot quickly. But then, we started to pull out of COVID, and that felt really exciting. Obviously we haven't pulled out of it, but the work started to return, and we were in a situation where we could start to hire again, and which was all really terrific. But that brought its own challenges because it was overwhelming. It was suddenly we had gone from not really having enough work to way too much, and trying to juggle all those different, buckets, if you will, and also just really concerned about the staff and making sure that people were happy and satisfied where they were, and so it's been really challenging for me, but also I'm loving it, and it's just been great.
It's an incredible time from a learning perspective to be thrust into a leadership position. And I think I've always looked at you as a leader. Now that your title is like more leader-like as a principal, but I've always seen you as a leader. But to assume the helm, so to speak, at a time like this, like how did you keep your sanity through it all and really and express the confidence to the team around you?
Well, the main thing we started doing is we had an 8:30 a.m. meeting with all the principals every single morning, which we had never done before, and actually really barely met at all. We would just sort of call each other randomly, which has been kind of one of the interesting side effects of the COVID experience, is that we've really become so much more organized, and so I think so much more efficient. But so we'd have these meetings, and they would, vary from being incredibly stressful where everyone's kind of yelling and freaking out to, okay, sort of dialing down into what really matters and how can we make things better. And so that was the main thing that we did. But for me, you ended up doing all this crazy stuff to keep everybody going. And I took that to heart. So for instance, I went to the office one day, and there was this huge pile of FedExes, all with CFAs and things that people had to respond to, but of course nobody could come into the office. So the next day I grabbed my car with my kid, and we went and picked up all the boxes and took them to everybody's house. Which, was all over the place. Yeah. Manhattan, Brooklyn. I think I even went out to the Bronx. I went up to Inwood. So, I just took it really seriously that I wanted people to feel connected to us. And I really did that in a lot of different ways. That was one. Another was just calling people to see how they were doing, really just trying to stay connected as much as possible. And then we did all this, we used to have, and now do after COVID, but we have these, what we call Friday Presents, where we bring the whole firm together and look at projects that we're doing across architecture and interior design, because sometimes when you're on the architecture side, you don't know what's happening on the interior design side, or vice versa. And so we started doing these Zooms where we would invite everybody, and there was always some sort of personal thing about it, like there'd be a theme. So for instance, one was everybody had to take a picture of something that they were enjoying during COVID. And that became a personal thing. So
ooh, what was the coolest picture you saw?
Oh, there were so many great ones. Like mine was, my cat had just brought in a bird. So I had this picture of the cat with a bird in its mouth. I think Paul Taylor had this amazing turtle that just showed up in his lawn at his country house where he was living. People were baking beautiful things and lots of bread, and it was great. And people had pictures of their children. And so it just like brought us together in a different way that we've never done before. And that was lovely. So we were pretty strident about people had to show up and come, and, we made a big effort to do all that kind of stuff. And then, at Christmas, we sent everybody a bottle of champagne with a nice card from us, since we couldn't all be together. And then we had a Zoom and we all toasted together. I mean, we just tried to do stuff like that where we were making it fun and it wasn't just about work.
Yeah. And, hearing you say kind of these personal themes and creating these moments, whether it's the principal meeting or the Friday Presents, where you're kind of, almost in a way forcing this connection, because I say force because having these routines can be monotonous and annoying sometimes, but I also believe that routine can really set you free. And when you think about these routines that you've established from within perspective of what the title of this is, defining hospitality, you're really, in a way, you're creating these gathering points for your team and yourself, and which will help me transition to, like, how do you define hospitality?
So how do I define hospitality?
Yeah,
so
how do you define?
I define hospitality as the true sense of being welcoming. And I think we were talking earlier about when I was a kid, growing up on the Upper West Side of New York, there was this really terrific Italian restaurant that we went to on 79th Street every Friday night. And they knew us. It was kind of like Cheers, right? Everybody knows your name. And I loved it there. And I think that was my first sort of foray into the true sense of being welcomed into a space and true hospitality. And they were so nice to me. I remember I would get tired at the end of the night and they would let me sleep across 2 chairs, or they'd let me sit at the bar and watch TV and talk to the bartender. And, it was just like, I was supposed to be there. And so for me, still living in New York, if I walk into a restaurant and someone doesn't immediately just acknowledge me, just to say, hey, I'll be right with you, I find that such a turnoff. And it's such a mistake, right? But it's such a hard thing for people to do well. And so that sense of walking into any space, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel with multiple people working at it, you should feel that sense of welcome from the second you get out of your car, to the person that opens your door, to the receptionist, to the bellman that walks by you should be saying, hi, welcome. There's this sense that you are supposed to be there and they're so happy that you're there.
When you would go to this, what was the restaurant called?
Tony's.
Tony's. Oh, that's it. Tony's. So when you would go to Tony's, was it Tony that was there, or was it everyone there? Like, what I'm trying to get at here is, okay, obviously I'm hoping it was Tony, but then I'm also hoping that everyone else that worked with Tony kind of tapped into that care that he had.
It was, Tony was always there, but Tony had clearly made it clear to the whole staff that this is how I'm going to run my business and you need to follow suit. And obviously he really cared. And it always felt like to me that everybody that worked there always cared too.
Now, do you think he said it like that, or do you think he said, "Hey, this is how I'm going to run on my business"?
I think he might have said it, hey, and this is how I'm gonna run my business.
Yeah. I just watched House of Gucci last night, and there were
No.
too many weird Italian accents that were not real. There was like New York accents, there were Al Pacino accents, and this kind of Italian accents, but it was just kind of all over the place. As I digress. So with on your path towards to leadership, where you are now, if you think about kind of that culture that Tony built in his restaurant that you appreciate, and now it's like the benchmark for everything. How have you taken that kind of idea or that culture that he's created or made everyone else, how he's made everyone else feel, and brought it over to what you're doing now?
Well, I mean, I think what's funny for me is that my best friend always gets annoyed with me because if we go into a restaurant and someone doesn't talk to us immediately, I'm like, we're out of here, we're not doing this. But I think that experience really brought, the Tony's experience rather, really brought to me that sense of what it really is to create great hospitality. And I think that that's why I've always been interested in hotels. I mean, that's, to me, it's such a fascinating thing that you're creating this space for someone to sort of temporarily live, but needs to feel pampered and welcomed and excited to be there. And it's difficult and it's hard to do it well. And it's not just about operations, obviously, it's about design too, but it's all those things in one that make it so interesting. And I think that I did pull sort of maybe unknowingly from those experiences as a kid with, with my parents running around New York, that those things were important.
And just as right now you said in this built environment, doing it well, like describe to me how you know when you've done it well, like a job well done.
Oh, well, that's really hard. Well, I mean, it's hard to walk into one of your own spaces that you've designed and not be super uber critical, at least for me. I'm sure that's true for a lot of designers. But I think, for me, that like one of my favorite stories about a hotel that I designed was we designed the Canby Hotel, and it's an autograph in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And it was originally a Ritz-Carlton. And the first time I went there, it was like snooty, lots of ladies in hats having that tea that they do at the Ritz-Carlton. And it just felt dated and weird and very strange and not inviting or exciting to be in. And then when we finished the hotel, we completely transformed it. It was a much more modern take on sort of the Arizona experience. And we also really geared it towards basketball players. We had extra long beds made because the stadium is right nearby. And so one of the last days I was at the hotel, Patrick Ewing was sitting in a chair that I had designed, completely dwarfing it, and looked, because I think he's like 7.5 feet tall. But he was like lounging and very comfortable, and the teammates were around, and it was just like everybody was just relaxed and excited to see each other. And it was like the complete antithesis of the first day that I walked in, where it had been snooty and not comfortable and pretentious. And so I don't know, to me, that's like the ultimate, is if someone's enjoying my space and clearly having a good time.
Yeah. And it's a bonus when it's like one of my heroes, Patrick Ewing. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I have a story about him. I'll tell you after. That's kind of funny. It's not appropriate for right now.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm most fascinated and amazed and awestruck by is how you guys can take, and when I say you guys, like designers, take these ideas of who is going to be walking through a space and design around that. So if you think about the transformation that you had at the Canby, you reposition that based around a psychographic. So what's your process for really truly understanding who that guest is?
Right. Well, I mean, it's hard, right? Because some hotels, it's really, really obvious, right? If it's, let's say we know that during the week, it's geared towards a millennial business travel, but during the weekend, it's going to be leisure people. And it depends on the city, right? Like in New York, you're probably going for almost every type of guest, right? Realistically. So sometimes that's a little tough. But in general, I think you're trying to figure out, kind of a smaller genre of people that you're designing for. And, but that's hard too, because you don't want to get pigeonholed by that. Like you kind of want to push people a little bit, right? So maybe, what we were worried about, there's all these people that come and stay at this hotel now, we don't want to lose them, but we want to add to that group of people, right? We want the people that are more interested in a more design-oriented, fashion-oriented experience than what they were getting before. So we had them in our mind the whole time. Like, okay, I don't want to lose that Ritz-Carlton client. We'll definitely lose some. There's no way. There's some people that are just going to be, I don't want to do this. I want that like traditional luxury experience. But it turned out that there were a lot of people that came back because they loved the hotel originally and the location was great for them for whatever reason. And a lot of them came back and said, oh, this is really great. I love it. And one guy even said to me, you've pushed my sense of design and into a place where I could be comfortable. And I didn't necessarily think that I could be comfortable in a place like this. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. That's like so flattering. Wow. So I loved hearing that. But I think it's hard to figure out exactly who your demographic is, because in truth, your demographic is usually many different types of people, right? It's not just the millennial that goes to this hotel. Like that would be silly if I only designed for them.
Or if it was only NBA players, it would be like a really small hotel.
Exactly.
With really big beds.
Yeah. Exactly.
So in thinking about the process to create these spaces and convey this feeling, right? That you can kind of just tell when you walk in, you almost smell it, right? You just feel it.
Right.
How are you creating these environments as a leader within your company now? Like just as far as you're talking about the presentations, the principal meetings, what are some other innovations that you're doing as a leader to make your team feel super comfortable?
That's a good question. That's hard. I mean, it's hard to do. For me, what I've been really trying to work on the last year and a half is making sure that people have the sense of autonomy, that they are in control, and that I really look to them to be designing the spaces. Obviously with my input and with the input of the senior staff, but where I want people to be happy at their job. And I think the way to do that is to make sure that people feel like that they really have an input and have a say in what we're doing. And so I'm a strong believer in working as a group. I think collaboratively we get to a much better product than if we're just sitting in silos at our desks, doing our own thing. Whereas if we get into a conference room and someone says, oh, it should be blue, and the other person says, oh, that's a great idea, how about if it's teal? You just get to something better together. And but that can be challenging too, right? I mean, it's not always easy. And but I think for me, that's something that helps our projects get to the, hopefully the high level that I think they are getting to, because we're doing it together.
Yeah. I love how you say you get to something better together through this collaboration. And if you think about how you were talking about this sense of autonomy and control, where you want to empower your team, how do you, what you do is so deadline heavy. It's crazy, right? And you have the collaboration and people all over the place. How do you instill that sense of autonomy and control with your team, but also ensure that the deadlines are still getting hit without micromanaging?
Well, we send a lot of emails that say, okay, guys, don't forget in 2 weeks, we're going down to Miami, or, whatever it is. I just send a lot of reminders and sort of show up at people's desks like, hey, how's it going? What's happening? I'm a huge believer in a schedule. And so we make sure there's a schedule. The schedule goes to everybody. Sometimes we can print it out and give it to people. And I think also because you make people accountable, then it's a whole different thing for them. I mean, if it's just, oh, Sarah's going down to Miami to present to the client and, none of us are involved, then they're not as interested. But if they're involved, as they are, then, oh gosh, we've got this deadline. We gotta stay on top of it.
I love the idea of accountability, because I find if you have true accountability, I think oftentimes people don't understand what accountability is, but if you have true accountability and your team is empowered, then you shouldn't need to micromanage, right? You create alignment, and then you praise when a job is well done. So I love hearing that. And then when you think about this idea of accountability, how do you talk about accountability and spread that to your team so that everything is still getting there? I know you're saying emails, but are there other rhythms that you guys have established since you've assumed this new position?
Well, I mean, that's been one of the interesting things about COVID, is that because we couldn't be together, we kind of had to be together. So, I mean, in other words, prior to COVID, there was a lot of sort of, hey, let's all just jump in a conference room and see what's happening and look at the work. I mean, of course, some of those were scheduled meetings, but now with the, the innovation of Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all that stuff, okay, we're going to have a meeting in 2 days at this time. I need you to come to the table with ideas. And I want everybody to come to the table with ideas so that we're, having a really productive discussion on what this space should be. And so I think that is very different than just running to someone's desk and saying, let's go into a conference room. And then if you don't like what they're doing, you kind of like help it along. Whereas because of the Zoom era, you had to show up with ideas. You couldn't just be like, well, I don't know, and I think that really helps.
Yeah, taking that idea of that, which you said earlier, of you want to get to something better together. I've thought about, as it pertains to you guys, because I know that we've spoken about internships and bringing in new people, and for me, I love the whole hybrid situation. But when I think about onboarding someone new, so much of what we learn about what we do is just like in passing, waiting at the copy machine or picking up samples from the library. How have you helped your new members feel supported and kind of help facilitate that institutional knowledge gain?
Well, we've done a lot since COVID. So now when someone new comes on, first of all, they have to start in the office, obviously, if they're vaccinated and don't have COVID.
Check.
And we do a bunch of things. Like, first, they have to meet with the IT guy, and he makes sure that they really understand their computer, how it works, our filing system, etc. Then they meet with the HR person so that they get all their materials set, all their forms. And then they meet with someone in my firm that helps to onboard people. So she personally sits down with every single person and walks them through how we set up every folder on our server, how we do things, how do you ask for a vacation day, like all that stuff that I think people get, we didn't, and that would sort of like evolve as a person came to work. And now we're realizing that it really makes people feel safe and much more comfortable if they understand all of these sort of constructs as they go on. And the expectation is that it's going to take them probably at least a week to just even get going, which is totally fine. And then having sort of checks and balances as they come in, I just sort of check in on people, whether through other staff members or with them personally, how is it going? what's going well, what isn't. And some people, respond to that really well. Others are really shy, and that's fine too. We kind of just sort of figure it out as we go along, and making sure that people are teamed well, that they are working with someone that they like, and that it's that there's a sort of mentee mentorship idea. And that's the other thing we did, is we set up a whole mentorship program, particularly for Revit, because Revit is, becoming just so important. I mean, it has been for a while, but now it's really become like essential. And making sure that people have a mentor in Revit so that they can go talk to someone about how to be more productive, having problems, etc.
I love hearing about all these procedures and checklists. There's a great book called The Checklist Manifesto, but again, it goes back to that idea of the routines that we all have kind of set us free, and it enables us to be, once we know what all that stuff is, we can be more creative. And the more that we know, and we don't have those little voices going off in the back of our head wondering, it puts us into a clear, like almost like a clean whiteboard, so we can be ultimately creative.
Yeah, because it feels horrible, right? If you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to fill out my timesheet, or whatever it is, like all these things that become really stressful, and then you're stressed about that, but not about, or you're not focused on the important thing.
Yeah. If you think about kind of, where you are, how you've gotten to where you are now, and if you think, if you're looking forward as a leader in the company and through, talking to all of your partners, like what's keeping you guys up at night now?
Oh, so many things.
What's rising to the top of that list?
For me, it's the staff. I mean, not in a bad way, just I'm just always worried that people are content and happy, and because you are your staff. So I want them to feel like they can always come talk to me, that that I'm a resource for them. But also challenging them, right? Like, it's not just being complimentary all the time. It's also about, hey, I really thought you could have done that better, and this is why. And so that stuff keeps me up big time.
And if you can take some of the lessons that Tony taught you and apply it to your, hey, Tony, and if you can apply like that idea that you were conveying about Tony to yourself and your team, like how can Tony help you with your team feel supported?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, but I mean, obviously there was a lot that happened behind the scenes at Tony's, and I'm often struck by that when I'm at these sort of hospitality events and seeing all these leaders, but all of us have these amazing group of people behind us that are really doing the important work. And so creating that culture where people are psyched to be working for us and happy and really productive is, that's my most important task, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of these conversations, obviously, and another one is just, it's kind of just showing up too, right? Like you said, when you're going over to people's desks, or you're like, hey, how are you? What's up?
Yeah.
And just like being there for your team. And
yeah,
I think you said, do you need help? Or like, for me, it's always like, hey, where are you stuck? Oftentimes I'll ask someone, where are you stuck? And then these stucks can really just be an anchor on someone. But if they share, if they're vulnerable and share their stuck, it's like, oh, we as leaders can help unstuck them very easily. So
exactly.
it's really good habit to get into asking where you're stuck.
Yeah, or what's the what is so hard about this one thing, and often it's something that I hadn't even thought about, because they're just approaching it in a different way that I would have, which is an asset for us, right? Because they're thinking about it in a different way than we would have, and that's smart, but sometimes they're getting stuck on something that's small, or, like, I feel like I can't do Revit. It's like, yes, you can. We're going to help you, or I don't know how to detail this piece of millwork. Okay, we've got samples for you. Oh, that's another thing we just did is I had this amazing group of people that just put together this really terrific resource for the whole office. So it has previous presentations, it has details, it has, it just has a tremendous amount of information all in one spot, really organized very nicely and easily. So it's just an easy place for someone to go and, maybe figure out how to do this thing in Rabbit that is, difficult for them right now.
Yeah, and that is a really challenging thing where you talk about like from your onboarding to this new resource that you've created. It's how can we all get the stuff that's between our ears out and that institutional knowledge and shared effectively. So yeah, I'd love to learn more about that at some point. That sounds really cool. And then as you are looking to the future with your hand on the helm, what's exciting you most about the future?
I'm just really excited about the work, right? I mean, it just feels like we're at a different level, and I'm just so excited about what I think we're going to be capable of doing as we move forward, and just kind of expanding our horizons, and also trying to diversify more. Obviously, that we learned that the hard way with COVID. So that's exciting too. We shouldn't only be doing hotels. We need to be doing other genres as well. So really focusing on that and trying to get more into the multifamily, even into some medical work, just broadening our thoughts on what is it that we really want to be doing.
I think it's also really exciting as you think about broadening your horizons, because one of the cool things about doing this podcast and having all these conversations is hospitality is transferable to everything. Right. It's making others feel comfortable and I think that it's a real miss that the design work that you and your colleagues and your peers have been doing, it can make such a profound difference in hospitals. It can make such a profound difference in multifamily by taking that hospitality design element and bringing it over into those areas. And to be honest, I'm really surprised that it hasn't happened more widespread.
I know. I mean, when was the last time you went into a hospital and it was a pleasant experience? Like, why is this so difficult? I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's like really weird. Why is every room that weird green color?
Yeah, exactly. And they're disgusting too.
Yeah, it's just horrible.
Do not go to the hospital. Cool. Now one question I want to ask you is, let's go back, like, let's say you're at Tony's restaurant.
Okay.
You're the little girl, you're walking and you're seeing yourself at the bar watching TV.
Right. Remember, I'm also there with my mother, who's an interior designer.
Oh.
She does high-end residential, which is a definite, she was a huge influence on me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's me and my mom and my dad, who's a writer, it's like two.
Okay, but your mom and dad are over there. They're talking about your parents are over there talking. You're at the bar watching TV. You sit next to yourself. And as you are now, as a leader that you are now, and you give yourself, your little self, some advice. What advice do you give yourself?
Oh my God, I don't know.
Do you order a Shirley Temple first?
Definitely.
Okay.
That's what I always had there. Good call. Always. And the tartufo to finish, those were awesome. Well, I came to interior design late. I did other things first, which was great. I mean, I worked at MTV and I worked on the Beavis and Butthead show. I did all these crazy things first, maybe kind of trying to escape that I wanted to be an interior designer because that was what my mom did and I didn't want to be like her. And so I think, my mom always said, you should be doing something creative. You're good at that. And so I was like, no, that's not what I should be doing. So I think maybe the advice to myself would be, maybe listen a little more carefully to your parents, and their advice was good advice.
What did you do for Beavis and Butthead?
This
is amazing.
I was the creator's assistant for a long time. And then I was a script coordinator. And then I transitioned to the, because of Beavis and Butthead, MTV Products became a global moneymaker. So I transitioned to the consumer products division and managed the relationship between them and all the artists and creatives, because they couldn't really speak to each other. And so I was kind of good at speaking to both of them. So I was sort of the liaison between the two. So I kind of like lived in both worlds. And then they asked me to manage the design. I mean, I didn't design it, but manage the designers and the architects for the MTV store. And that's when I was really like, aha, I do like this. This is really cool.
Really?
And then I went back to school. Yeah.
So it's also interesting if you go back to the idea of taking ideas and turning them into concrete places or built environment. It's interesting that you were kind of the liaison between the creatives and the business people, because you could translate. And really, I think it's being able to translate these complicated ideas and communicate them. It's interesting that you learned that at MTV.
There's definitely a consistency there. Yeah. Right. Because a big part of what I do now is like, exactly what you said, communicating those ideas and really being able to explain what we're doing and sort of stay there with a client like this, like kind of help them see the whole thing and listen to them, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. And honestly, like our best projects are the ones where the client is heavily involved and there's a great interaction. Because just like at the office where we build something better together, the same is true with a client.
When you were working at MTV, was everyone in all the production in like one building?
Yeah, we were all at 1515 Broadway, where it still is.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then, so who was your favorite VJ?
I can't even remember their names anymore. That was so long ago. Who was that cute guy with, Carson Daly.
Oh, Carson Daly. He's still around.
He's still around.
What about, yeah.
And then there was a woman
Curry.
named Adam Curry. He was great. Then there was a woman named Sarah, who was great too. Forgetting what her last name was.
There was Duff, wasn't she one of them?
Oh, Duff, that's what it was, not Sarah, right, Duffy. Yeah. Right, yeah.
Huh.
That was a big part.
And then the news people, like Kurt Loder was always like a hero of mine. Where is he? Really?
I don't know what happened to him.
Wow. I feel like I would walk past him on the street. I think he lived on 13th Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was really awesome. Well, and then at MTV, what was your favorite part of that whole experience? Because you were there at a super cool time too.
It was a super cool time. And also, and at the time, MTV was run by a bunch of like 30-year-olds. I mean, it was crazy. Like everybody was super young. I was 22 and we were all just like running around doing our thing, really kind of by the seat of your pants. So, I mean, it was so much fun. But wait, I'm sorry, I digress. What was the question? I'm sorry.
No, now don't worry about the question, because now I'm thinking, did they film the show Remote Control there?
Yeah, it was all done there.
And Jon Stewart was there? That was like when he first started, right?
Yeah, and he was good friends with Mike Judge when I was his assistant. And so Jon Stewart would come down and be like, hey, I need to talk to Mike. I'm like, okay. And I mean, I had so many amazing experiences.
Oh my gosh. And just all the artistic talent that would come walk through those doors.
Yeah. And so many different ways, right? Like musicians, but also graphic designers, artists, animators. I mean, it was endless. Everybody was creative and interesting.
When you're working in a place like that, it becomes like, okay, I'm working here. It's just, you're doing your job, right? But were there any moments where you were just like awestruck and gobsmacked by someone that walked in, like a hero of yours?
I mean, that happened all the time.
But you have to keep your cool. Did you ever lose your cool?
Right. Oh no, you can't work at MTV and be like, oh my God, Madonna, hi. Like that doesn't work. You just like go into the bathroom and scream. No.
Oh my gosh, that's got to be that was such an incredible and amazing time.
Yeah, even just the lobby, right? You're just going out to get your lunch and you'd walk by, I remember I was walking right behind Kurt Cobain's wife.
Courtney Love.
Yeah, she was always around. She's beautiful and like just this amazing presence. You'd just be like walking behind her as you're going to get your turkey sandwich.
Wow. And then you just also realize that everyone's just a human being, right?
Exactly. Yep.
They just
A
have a lot
normal
more
human.
fans.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think very easy to be famous. I think it must be pretty kind of unpleasant, I would think.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely has to have its have its downfalls.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so I want to tell you that I'm very grateful that you have given me this time to share with you.
Oh,
And
thank you for having me. I was
thank
really
you.
touched.
Yeah. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you?
Oh, they can just email me. It's sduffy@stonehilltaylor.com.
Great. And then stonehilltaylor.com is the website. We'll put all that in the links.
Yeah, and we're on Instagram and LinkedIn as well.
Oh,
And
great.
so am I.
We'll put all of that in there. But I just want to say thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And everyone else, if this has helped change your idea on hospitality and building hospitality and designing for hospitality, please share this with your friends. And thank you, everyone.